We felt like at the time already that our big competitors had already gotten a little bit too enterprisey and big and clunky. We used to like some of these tools. We don't really like them anymore and they've gotten really expensive. Like, why can't we do like a simple version of them? That was sort of like our initial starting point.
That was 2012. 3 developers working at a Dutch consultancy tired of paying for software that wasn't working for them. So they built something to replace it, called it AppSignal, and ran it for 13 years without $1 of outside capital.
I think my qualities are in taking something from 0 to 10 and not so much in taking it from 10 to 1,000.
But in 2025, they raised $22 million. Roy moved out of the operator seat, and the investors and founders brought in a new CEO to run their US expansion.
I think they were very self-aware in the sense of where they had strengths and where they could use help on the go-to-market side.
Same deal, 3 different reasons to say yes. This is what that transition looks like from every seat at the table, and what founders can take from it when they hit their own version of this moment. AppSignal has been around since 2012. Roy and Thijs co-founded it with a third partner after years of working together.
Thijs and myself met in high school, nerding out over stuff. That's what bonded us.
Before AppSignal, they ran 80 Beans, a Ruby consultancy in Amsterdam. AppSignal started as just an internal tool. They were paying for monitoring software that had gotten too expensive and too complicated, so they decided to build something simpler themselves.
We used to like some of these tools. We don't really like them anymore and they've gotten really expensive. Like, why can't we do like a simple version of them? That was sort of like our initial starting point.
That internal tool became a product. That product got customers, and they ran it for 13 years without $1 of outside capital. Not because nobody offered, but because the offers never made sense for them.
A lot of these sort of like funding deals or like people we talked to over the years didn't really make a lot of sense to us because, you know, they were just like interested in taking this thing and just like completely transforming it into something else.
By 2024, they had over 2,000 customers across 60 countries, monitoring more than 100 billion requests a month. After 13 years, something had changed in the market and in them. The decision to finally take on outside capital started with Roy asking himself an honest question.
I think my qualities are in taking something from 0 to 10 and not so much in taking it from 10 to 1,000.
That's not a small thing to admit. Roy had been running AppSignal's customer side and community relationships for over a decade. He knew the company better than almost anyone. And he was the one who said, someone else should be the operator for what comes next.
For 12, 13 years, knowing only my high school economics class stuff, I took it to many millions in ARR. At some point, you have to recognize there are people with actual degrees in accounting who are probably better suited to take over.
After that long in the founder's seat, he'd earned the right to shape what comes next. But Roy's non-negotiables weren't about valuation or structure, they were about culture.
People first, and that's inside and out. So that's regarding the team, but that's also how we conduct ourselves in the developer communities. It's about how we conduct ourselves towards customers. It boils down to we treat others the way we would like to be treated. And it doesn't mean we never mess up or we never have to increase prices, because all of that happens. But it does mean that we own our mistakes. We are careful in our communication of why we do certain things, good news, bad news. That's important to us.
And then there was the question of who would actually run this thing.
So we spoke to a bunch of people. And then when we first got into talks with Brandon, our current CEO, that just clicked. He just got it. And that's when we knew, okay, this is going to be it.
Roy still sits on the board and serves as brand ambassador. He's still close to the company, still in the developer community, but no longer in the operator seat.
So I go to conferences and still talk to a bunch of people about AppSignal because I do love the product and the company.
That's a specific kind of founder outcome. Not a full exit, not a full handoff, but a transition into a role you're built for. Thijs is the CTO. He co-wrote the first lines of AppSignal's code, and he's still the one who goes deep with the team to rebuild infra and shape the technical vision. His reason to do the deal was different than Roy's. It was about the roadmap, specifically things that had been possible for a while, but were going to require real capital to execute.
We felt like the market was like changing a little bit. You got the whole AI thing coming up. You have this whole open telemetry standard, which is an open standard for collecting monitoring data. That's been around for years, but it really started picking up some steam last year as a true viable alternative to writing your own integrations. We felt a much larger part of the market would be accessible to us, but that would be more capital intensive.
The other thing that changed Theis's mind about bringing on outside capital was realizing that the right investors brought things beyond money to the table.
They really come from the same background. There are people that have done a lot of developer tool and monitoring related companies in the past. And so they really knew our market inside out. And when we talked to them, we learned a bunch of stuff about all kinds of details that we didn't even really realize was true before being in this market for 12 years. So we really felt like they were true experts.
That's the thing a lot of bootstrap founders miss about taking on capital. The right investors aren't just about the money. They're a perspective that you don't have yet. But investors were only one part of what AppSignal needed. The other part was someone who could actually run the planned US expansion push. And that's a different skill set entirely.
It was kind of obvious to me that we're just getting started and we're working on a whole bunch of cool new stuff that I think will delight our customers. On the one hand, we've been doing it for like 12, 13 years at that point. So at some point you kind of need some fresh blood and we needed some new perspectives.
But before getting into that, it's worth sitting with what 13 years of bootstrapping actually produced and what it left undone. What it built was a product with real discipline, no feature sprawl, no complexity for its own sake.
Always building up the complexity out of simple primitives. Instead of like making a lot of features with all these sort of like separate flows and all these bells and whistles everywhere, you sort of try to kind of analyze like what do we really need here and how can we combine like 5 simple sim systems in a way where this complexity kind of emerges. Some of them had started out as like really focused, like easy to use Ruby on Rails focused on monitoring tools. And then they had drifted off in all these directions and you kind of like needed a degree to actually be able to use them.
What it also built was a culture and a specific identity. Bootstrapping wasn't just a financial strategy, it became who they were.
Sometimes you have to take a leap. And the combination of having the capital and having people who dare to say, no, we'll just triple, quadruple, 10x our spend on this thing to see if it works. That takes guts I apparently don't have. If there's one thing that doesn't work for software developers, it's salespeople calling them like on the daily. We wanted to take a different approach because we hated being sold to that way.
But what it didn't build was the go-to-market infrastructure to break into the US market. They had 2,000 customers in 60 countries and virtually no commercial team set up to reach the US enterprise segment. That gap is where Brandon comes in. Brandon was brought in by both the investors and the founders together as the operator they both trusted to run the next chapter. He wasn't part of the funding decision, he was the outcome of it.
I started as a developer back in the early 2000s. I eventually moved on to become a management consultant with McKinsey and then have had a variety of roles for different tech companies over the years, ranging from analytics to operations to product management.
What he saw when he looked at AppSignal was a specific kind of opportunity.
I think they were very self-aware in the sense of where they had strengths and where they could use help on the go-to-market side.
Profitable product, deep developer trust, zero US commercial infrastructure. That's a company that did the hard part and is sitting at the edge of a much bigger market to go after.
Less about looking for leadership to come in and be a CEO. It was really about them partnering with some outside investors that could help on the go-to-market side.
His first year was mostly spent on the foundation, not growth, groundwork.
There's been a lot of change, a lot of getting to know each other, and a lot of setting the foundation. And now we're at a stage where we're going to leverage that foundation to show some growth.
And the thing he was clearest on from day one was what he wasn't going to touch.
The customer approach and the empathy. Where I'm really focused here is, as we go forward, is making sure that we are maintaining some of the magic that has made AppSignal what it is, while continuing to build around it with people, with capabilities, and particularly on the go-to-market side.
Most founder content about a first fundraise talks about the pitch, the deck, the term sheet, but it's also often much earlier in a company's life cycle. In AppSignal's case, the most important things were the internal negotiation that happens before any of that. Who's going to run it? What's going to change? And what's going to stay the same?
There are people we can work with who have already made the mistakes we are about to make. So instead of making the mistake and then learning from it like 6 months from now, have others made those mistakes in the past, and we can just start implementing those learnings today.
The AppSignal team took about a year to narrow in on the right partners. And what made Elsewhere partners different was that they understood what AppSignal had built. They weren't trying to turn it into something else. And what made Brandon the right CEO wasn't just his resume.
So we spoke to a bunch of people. And then when we first got into talks with Brandon, our current CEO, that just clicked. He just got it. And that's when we knew, okay, this is going to be it.
If you're running a bootstrap company and thinking about what the next chapter looks like, the AppSignal story can be a useful map. Roy knew that he was a 0 to 10 founder. Tice knew the technical roadmap needed more capital than revenue alone could fund. And Brandon knew exactly what kind of company he was looking to run. The deal only happened because all three of those things were true simultaneously.
I strongly believe that goodwill and business advantages can go and do go hand in hand. When you try to do things right, there's reciprocity in there.
No nonsense, probably, if I want to use one word, just like keeping it simple.
I'm very honored and humbled to be a part of the journey that the team had started, and really excited about helping us get to the next phase and remain who we are as we're doing it.